All right, welcome to another episode of the Cassels Cast. My name's Eamon Cassels. Joining me today is going to be Benny Hughes. We're going to be talking NBA playoffs. We got a ton to talk about, especially with that Timberwolves Nuggets series. So, without any further ado, let's just get into the episode. All right, joining the show now is Benny Hughes to discuss all things NBA playoffs with an especially big focus on this amazing Minnesota Timberwolves Denver Nuggets series we got going on. But yeah, first things first, how you doing today?
Great, man. I'm great. Like I had told you, I'm just about to head out of town, so we're gonna get a little weekend trip in. The vibes are high in Wolves land, so yeah, it's a great Friday today, man.
Yes, sir. Happy to have you on after two big Wolves wins. Wolves go up 2-1 in the series after a dominant performance at home last night. Overall, where were you heading into this series with the Wolves' chances, and where are you now 3 games into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I was probably skewing more optimistic because obviously it's way easier to because we have such a close lens on the Wolves team, so you know that they can kick up, especially when it comes to this time of year. So I was a little bit more optimistic. I thought it was going to be a long series no matter what. I did not blame anyone for picking Denver. I also didn't blame anyone for picking the Wolves. So but just kind of as it's gone along, and obviously with this Aaron Gordon injury, I think that is a massive, massive domino like that in question mark for the rest of the series and could really impact things. So yeah, so I was pretty positive. I was feeling pretty good about it. I could see the things that each team could pick at the other, but I would say that obviously even more looking good right now. So
Yeah, absolutely. Last week on the pod, I was kind of skewing towards Denver, and then a couple hours after we got done recording, the news about Peyton Watson potentially missing the entire series came out. I'm not gonna lie, that changed my perspective a lot. I did throw it up on my Twitter a couple hours before the playoffs that I was changing my pick to the Wolves, even though I picked Nuggets at first, and I definitely feel good about that. Either way, I always thought this was gonna be a 6 or 7 game series. With the way things are trending, though, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but it could maybe be closer to 5 or 6 at this point with how good the Wolves look. So yeah, what have been your biggest takeaways over these past 2 games? When you look at game one, I think especially after that first quarter, it was a really rough last 3 quarters for the Wolves. But what has changed in your eyes from game one to games two and three?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that there were still some positive things to take away from game one. I don't think either team felt like they played up their potential. And I think that we were talking about after that of like, the Wolves kind of let that one slip, right? Like Denver wasn't shooting super awesome from downtown in that one. And they're like, that's going to kick back up. That's going to regress back to the mean. But I mean, two and three, I feel like you got to start with Rudy Gobert, man. Like that dude is in impeccable shape. He is just running down Nikola Jokic right now, which has really been just awesome to watch. And it's just been so impressive, like his relentlessness of like, I'm not gonna let you breathe for 1 second. So that's kind of where I was at, like just initially of like what has changed from games one to two to three. But he's been pretty much awesome throughout the whole series, which has been cool to see the social media arc as well, as we know that's not always the kindest to Rudy Gobert there. So
Yeah, most definitely. I think Rudy is the right person to start with. When you look at containing this high-powered Nuggets offense who entered the playoffs boasting the best offensive rating in the entire league, and you look at stopping this Nikola Jokic puzzle of sorts, Rudy Gobert has done a better job of anyone I could ever think of in terms of guarding Jokic one-on-one. I've honestly never seen anything like it, and just completely limited him. I mean, Jokic is shooting 40% from the floor right now. He's shooting less than 35% when guarded by Gobert, which is just totally insane. And Gobert's really responding to that physicality. He's not backing down at all. He's mirroring every move. He's taking away the playmaking. The verticality has been awesome. And I mean, his conditioning is totally insane given his age and size. And I've just been incredibly impressed with him. It's genuinely off the top of my head the best defensive performance through 3 games of any playoff series I can think of, and doing it against the 3-time MVP, the guy who most people view as the best player in the world, is incredibly impressive. So yeah, with that in mind, do you have any other sort of defensive performances in recent memory that compare to this, or do you think this is just like the best defensive performance you could think of recently?
that's a good question. That's a really awesome question because I feel like that, just with playoff defenses, they try to scheme it up a little bit more. Like obviously, we remember 2 years ago, like that was like the narrative, right? Is like Rudy didn't guard Jokic one on one, and so I think with that, it just kind of comes out in the wash in terms of like there's not that many like one on one, true like mano a mano matchups anymore, which like some people may ding, but I'm like, that's the best strategy. That's the best strategy. So I can't think of one necessarily off the top of my head. But yeah, just holding Jokic, 7 of 26 last night. He just took so many threes for no reason. He just accepted that that was his fate, which is just shocking to see from him. And he's missing all those 8 to 10 footers that we've seen him make over and over again all season long. And so it's just like, yeah, the effort to contain that, to contain him, and to force him into things that he doesn't want to do, is just like tip of the cap to Rudy, man. Like he's just been unreal this series.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the three ball is a big factor here. Jokic just hasn't been able to hit his outside shots at all. And then you just also look at, I feel like games one and two mostly, up until that fourth quarter in game two, Jokic just wasn't trying to go at Gobert a lot at all. And I think that's just a testament to his greatness. But then you look at really the fourth quarter and then most of game three, Jokic started going at Gobert and it just didn't work at all. And Gobert stood his ground and it was just truly incredible. And I mean, honestly, I feel like this is a strategy that's sustainable, especially when you look at being able to sort of take away the playmaking aspect because it's just really Gobert and Jokic one on one. And then, I mean, if the shooting doesn't come back around, I see no reason why this wouldn't be sustainable. So yeah, just a totally absurd performance from Gobert. And it's really poetic that about 24 hours after that game one, he doesn't get named to be a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. I think everyone knew Wemby was going to win it, but I think Gobert is absolutely deserving of second or third place. And then he just comes out and he puts together really two of the best defensive performances I've ever seen against the best player in the world. And I mean, yeah, I think we can talk about the other side of the ball with Jokic because I feel like that's been a big story. You look at Jaden McDaniels after game two calling the entire Nuggets team bad defenders. And then responding to that with a 20-point performance in game three and just totally dominating them. They were just attacking the rim relentlessly, putting Jokic through countless actions, and his rim protection, in my eyes, has been incredibly subpar. His pick-and-roll defense has been bad. If he drops, you can have an open jump shot, or you can just go at him at the rim, and they really have no solution. So, yeah, what have your main takeaways been, both in terms of this Minnesota offensive approach and Jokic's defense?
Yeah, it's been very like just awesome coaching, I would say, just like first and foremost of like I think that I remember hearing a quote, I can't remember who said it or like who grabbed it, but it was like they told Julius and Ant at the end of game two, like no more jumpers, like just take it at him. And that's like just the right approach, man, because like the perimeter defenders on the Nuggets, like even though they've got a couple like solid ones, like I'm not gonna come on here and be Jaden. Like I can't back that up. So even though they have a couple solid ones, like get them in rotation. They're beating them off the dribble, and then there's nothing at the rim. I mean, like Jaden was 9 of 13 last night, and he was 1 of 3 from three. So that means he was 9 of 10 from 2 point range. And you look at Io, he was 10 of 12 from 2 point range, and all of them were layups. Like Jokic does not want to challenge that, and they've done a great job of like putting him in the action, making him more tired, but then also being like, oh, you're at the rim, like we don't respect that at all, and we're just gonna finish right through you, over the top of you, however we can do it. So yeah, so Jaden backing it up, one just like badass, like so cool. So awesome to see like the response and having 2 days to kind of stew on it and everyone's talking about it. And then him just coming out, what do you have, 25, 23? I had the box score. I can look at. Oh, just 20 and 10. 20 and 10. But yeah, the rebounding too. I mean, like you can just look at that one, like he was drawing fouls too, even on some of the boards he didn't get. But him and Io just took it straight at Jokic and straight at that Nuggets defense and is like basically like, we don't respect what you can do. And the Nuggets don't have faith in it because they went zone for like the majority of the second half. Like that to me is just an admission of like, we can't guard you, so we're going to try this kind of funky thing to try to throw you off. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a great point about the coaching too. You look at it really game one, I felt like they were settling for way too many jumpers. I thought the shot diet was really awful, and then they came out in game two, and I was like, is this going to be the same thing over again? And then really in that second quarter, they started attacking the rim, and it worked to perfection, and the Nuggets really have no answer for it. I mean, I feel like the biggest advantage heading into the series for the Wolves was just, one, they don't have anyone who can guard Ant, and just in general, they can't keep up with the Timberwolves athletes. They don't have the rim protection. This was the 28th ranked rim defense. This was the 21st ranked defense overall. So, I mean, I would consider Aaron Gordon a positive defender personally, but outside of him, they really don't have any positive defenders. And I think that's a huge flaw. When you look at their 21st ranked defense, that's the worst unit out of offense or defense in the entire playoffs. And I feel like that's just a huge advantage. And props to Chris Finch for the game plan and really trying to expose this weakness. And then on the other end of the floor, I feel like we talked about Rudy guarding Jokic one-on-one a lot, but I don't think a lot of coaches would trust his guy to do that. Just based off the playoffs, sort of what you were talking about, where it's like, oh, we're going to help, we're going to double. I feel like that's typically been the strategy, but Finch has really stood his ground. He's been like, you know what, we're just going to put Rudy on him pretty much the entire game, and it's worked to perfection. So, I mean, Finch is a guy who's been criticized a lot throughout the season. I've criticized him at points, but I feel like this series he's been truly amazing. So I think that's a great point. And, I mean, the Jaden thing, that has to be my favorite quote ever. And how serious he was, the deadpan delivery, everything was perfect. And you could just tell it really just, it came from his heart. He genuinely despises this team. And I think that's what we need in the NBA. And I also think that's what the Timberwolves need. They need that extra edge. I feel like throughout the season that had kind of been in question throughout the year, but Jaden's bringing it. And I mean, responding with that 20-point performance was totally insane. I mean, he came out in the first quarter and he had, I think, like 10 or 11 of his points right in the first quarter, just attacking the rim relentlessly, scoring at will. They legitimately had no answer for him. And heading into the series, I thought Jaden was a real X factor, just based on the fact that, you know, Ant's going to draw the toughest matchup. Obviously, like Christian Brown, that's not an elite defender by any means, but then Julius is going to draw the Aaron Gordon matchup, or with Gordon out now, the Spencer Jones matchup, the second toughest matchup. And that leaves potentially Cam Johnson or Jamal Murray on Jaden, and I feel like just with his offensive growth this season, that was an area that the Timberwolves really had to lean into, and they have thus far. You know, he scored 20 points, but I felt like he could have had legitimately 30. It felt like a very loud 20, and I still felt like there was points throughout the game where I was like, you know what? They should just get Jaden the ball here. He should be attacking this mismatch every time down the court. So I think we're going to see an even bigger game from him on Saturday and throughout the series. I think that's just going to continue to be a big theme with this Wolves team.
Yeah, that's an awesome point about like the point of attack defender that's guarding him. I went back and watched some of the regular season matchups, and like Jaden, I think he had a couple good games, but it's like not only can he just beat those guys just because like they are lesser defenders and the Nuggets have to allocate those defenders elsewhere in order to stop Julius and Ant, but it's also like whenever you run a pick and roll with Jaden, like they're not guarding it the same way as they guard Ant, right? Like Ant, they're bringing him up to the level, they're putting two on the ball, they're trying to get the ball out of his hands. Jaden, they've seemed content with just running a drop with Jokic, which he isn't very good at, honestly. Like Jokic is way better in that high wall coverage. Like, I mean, we can put the comp up, but that was similar to Cat. You remember that whenever he was at the 5, they would put that defensive strategy into play just because they both are quite good at that. But they're going to put Jokic in a drop if they're going to run a pick and roll with Jaden, and if he doesn't just beat his guy off the dribble and he does need a screen, like he's just going to kill that. Like he's retreating towards the rim, and Jaden's just going to be able to operate where he's comfortable in and just get buckets, man. Like it's no resistance. He can get to the rim, he can get to that little mid range jumper. And yeah, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like just in general with this season from Jaden, the biggest area of improvement I've noticed is just constant aggression. I mean, obviously you look at the regular season, he wasn't excellent for all 82 games, but in general, he really cut back on those bad games, and every single night it was looking like he was ready to attack any poor mismatches, and his rim finishing has been absurd. His shot making from all three levels really has been super improved, and I feel like that's just a huge boon to this Timberwolves team overall. It gives them a much needed different element and really a dependable third scorer. And I mean, you look at this series that Randall and Ant are having, it's really a big benefit what they're getting from Jaden. I feel like that's going to have to continue for them to make another deep playoff run.
You're totally right. I mean, like they can't just hide anyone on Jaden anymore, and like at times that was the case, even as recently as like 2 or 3 years ago, right? Like, and just like that boon that you're talking about, and his uptick in not only usage but just being able to attack that and kill that, like it just kind of flips the defense on its head, and it's just been massive for just the entire offense as a whole. But and like you're talking about, like realistically, like Julius and Ant haven't had awesome series, you know. Like obviously Ant, you can understand it a little bit more with the knee. But he's doing the right things out there, and he's doing enough and relying on his guys enough, and they're coming through for him, like every single one of them down the line. So
Yeah, most definitely. I want to talk about Ant and Julius in a second, but I do have a question about Jokic. And, I don't always love to have this conversation, but I do think it's kind of relevant after these past 3 games. And quite frankly, how he finished the regular season. His defense has really been terrible in my eyes all season long. Do you think that Shea has officially surpassed him as the best player in the world?
It's an awesome, yeah, that is a great question. You're hitting me with the hard ones, man, the reactionary ones. I mean, I would say it's like a 1A, 1B situation. I still think that you can argue, like, obviously Jokic is having a bad series, but like, I don't know. I try not to go with the sway of that and let like a smaller sample size, but you're right in that you do have to take this into account. Like, these are 3 games like that Denver was heavily favored in this series, and now like they're probably not favored anymore, and he's been pretty awful, especially on the defensive end. So Shea definitely has the advantage there on that end of the floor. I still think that Jokic's supercomputer brain and his playmaking is really awesome. And Minnesota just kind of like has figured out a way to at least limit him. But I mean, I still think that the huge game or maybe multiple games, whether or not the Wolves win those games or not, are coming. But if you're gonna make me pick, I'll say Shea. I'll say Shea has the slight edge. I still think that it's like closer, but I mean, just the body of work from the last 2 years, I think that you can take that into account, and just the defensive end of the floor. Like, I feel like that I personally put a little more stock into that, and just Shea's ability. Like, obviously, he's not coming out guarding the best guy, and I'm not the hugest fan of him and watching him play, but like, he's obviously an incredible scorer, and he's like a noticeably much better defender than Jokic. I will say, like, the small caveat to that is that it's a lot more noticeable when a center isn't very good on defense, right? Because like the rim protection thing is such a huge thing, because that's where everyone's trying to get to. So it's a lot easier. Not that they're hiding Shea, but like it's a lot easier to be like, oh yeah, he's pretty solid because he's guarding the third option, and it's usually a perimeter player. So I think that gets put under the microscope a little bit more when you're talking about Jokic, but yeah, I think that you would be right into you could make an argument for Jokic too. But yeah, what do you think about that? I'm curious now.
Yeah, I've been a big time Jokic fan,
Mhm.
really throughout his career, and I would still consider myself a Jokic fan. But yeah, for me, I think Shea's officially surpassed him, and I really started thinking about that at points throughout the regular season where Shea's just so dominant in the clutch. He's so flawless as a basketball player, especially now that he's elevated as a playmaker. I do think some of the defense is a little bit overrated, especially he's playing with this really all time great defense. So it's not like he's an otherworldly defender by any means, but he's a positive defender by all accounts. And I mean, really considering that he has zero flaws, I think he has to be above Jokic for me at this point. I do think it's still relatively close, but just how flawless he is, and I'm not even saying just based on these last 3 games, but Jokic's defense is a real problem, and you just can't scheme against Shea in the same way. I mean, if you double him, he's going to make the right reads, which, by the way, Jokic can do too. He can beat you in really any one-on-one situation, and then you can't attack him defensively. So I think the gap between their offenses is less than the gap between their defenses. So yeah, ultimately I'd have to go with Shea. I would have had him as my MVP for the second straight year, and before that, I thought Jokic could have legitimately won 4 times. I think he should have won it the year over Embiid. But yeah, I mean, I think he's just so undeniable and he's so flawless. And I mean, you look at Wemby. Obviously the health concerns are real, but I think there's a chance that Wemby could even surpass Jokic at some point in the not too distant future, just because of the absurd defensive impact and then everything he brings to the table offensively. But that's kind of a discussion for another day. Let's shift back into focus with this Wolves series and talk a little bit about. I guess we can start with Ant and then move ahead to Randall. What have you made of Ant's series so far, and do you sort of have any concerns with the injury because he doesn't look totally 100%, or do you think this is just more of a testament to how great this team is overall?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like I think they're getting really awesome performances from their role players. So it's not like they've really needed Ant to put on the cape and be a superhero. So which has been awesome. Like, I don't know, you can knock them for that, but I'm not going to. Like, if they can win their games using the other guys, like, awesome. That's even better. That's way more sustainable too, right? Like, if you can get everyone on the same page, like playing pretty well. I think that he's going to get better as time goes on. I will say, like, last night, even just looking at his shot, like, he was still kind of off, but like the lift looked way better than it did in the first 2 games. Like, he took a couple pull ups that went, just watching it, I was like, okay, that looks way like I believe in that way more than I had in the first 2 games. Like, he just looked like he was like getting it back. And because it's just like a pain management thing, at least from my understanding of it, I think that he'll continue to be able to figure out, like, okay, here's what I need to do in order to still get my jumper off, to still be effective, to still score the amount of points that they're going to need me to score at some point. And here's how I can get to that while not being inefficient in doing so. So obviously, like not his best game last night, not his best series overall. He only played 24 minutes last night, which I think is really awesome. Like if you can win a game and Ant only plays for 24 minutes, you're probably in a pretty good place. He was also in foul trouble, weirdly, some last night. But game two was just impressive from a human perspective of just him gutting it out, still scoring 30. Did he have 30? High 20s? 30? Yeah, 30? Okay. Yeah, I'm already losing it, man. Like that was 3 days ago, and I can't. It was late at night. That's what I'm gonna blame it on. But,
These
but
late
yeah.
night games are crazy.
Oh my god, dude. Yeah, and then let's put the one that's on the weekend at 7:30. Awesome, man. No, anyway, sorry. That's a different. I got on a tangent. I'm sorry. NBA. But him gunning it out in game two, really, really cool. Just impressive, man. Just from that perspective, and again, not his best game last night, but I think he's going to continue to get better, and that jumper is going to start to look better and better as he kind of figures out what he needs to do in order to have the same lift, have the same mechanics, and knock that down.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I definitely agree with that. The game two performance was totally heroic. Even though efficiency wise, it probably wasn't his best performance, but just being able to score 30, and he was really getting to the rim at will in that game, and that was a big adjustment from game one, and that's a huge positive in my opinion with that knee injury. And he collides, I believe, with Jokic, and they have that knee to knee contact early in the game, and they're down big, and I'm like, whoa, is this series really gonna get lost with Ant's knee injury and stuff? And then he comes back and he puts together a really stellar game, and he looks like himself. And I mean, overall, even in game one and game three as well, the defense has looked really good, and I think that was a big question for me. Based on his regular season, he wasn't too good on defense. I think it was one of his worst defensive seasons of his career, and then that coupled with the knee injury, I was always a little bit concerned, like, what kind of defense are we going to get from Ant? And he's been awesome. He's been wrecking havoc. Obviously, he had that awesome quote about Dwayne Wade after game two. And I mean, yeah, his defensive playmaking has been really strong. On the ball, he's been good. He's had to guard Murray at times, and he's handled that well. Obviously, Jaden's been the primary guy on Murray, which I feel like we kind of glossed over when talking about his awesome offense. But Jaden's really shut down Murray, and that's been really a huge part of their success, as well as obviously Gobert on Jokic. But yeah, Ant overall I think has been really solid given the circumstances, and I think he's only going to get better as time goes on. He missed, I think it was 11 out of the last 14 regular season games, so it's clear he's just not in a total rhythm, but all things considered, I think he's been really good. And I've also been impressed with the playmaking. He's just making the right reads whenever they double him, and he's just really doing all the right things. I mean, some of the shots, I feel like in game one weren't great, but after that, I feel like his shot selection has been really solid, and I think it's just a matter of time before they start going in, and then the Wolves ultimately could reach another level. I do think for them to make another deep playoff run, assuming that Wemby's healthy for the next round and the Spurs take care of business against the Blazers, I think to beat the Spurs and then obviously potentially the Thunder, I think they are going to need him to return to more of his elite form and reach another level, but I definitely think that's possible with more reps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, again, he's getting the help right now, and so like he can take his time to kind of ease into it. Like he's got the time. It's not like they're down 2-1 in this case, or they're, gosh forbid, they were down 3-0. So it's like he does have the time in order to get his legs back under him and find it. So
Yeah, most definitely. And I definitely think this is just a big reminder of how much talent this Timberwolves team has overall. When you look at the series that Jaden's having, Io's having, even Rudy on the offensive end, especially in that game one, he was really good. All around, this team is just Dante. I got to shout out Dante. He's been incredible on both ends of the floor throughout this series, just making plenty of winning plays. But yeah, just in general, this Wolves team has so much talent. I feel like throughout points during the season, they've kind of forgotten about that. And I feel like in some ways, this is like a blessing in disguise that Ant might not be 110% right now. That we're just really being able to see all of the talent. And when Ant returns to form, I feel like that will just be even more of a lift to this team, obviously, but it will also be a reminder of, hey, we don't have to run everything through you necessarily. We can use you off the ball more. We can get Jaden involved, and I feel like for them to reach their ceiling, it's going to really have to be a collective effort overall. I want to talk about Julius a little bit. really, really strong game two. Games one and three, not so great. And game three, I was a little surprised he didn't have a bigger performance just with Aaron Gordon being out. But yeah, overall, how do you view this Julius experience so far? And do you honestly view it as a positive that they haven't necessarily gotten the best version of Julius and they're up 2-1? Or, yeah, how do you think he can maybe build some more consistency throughout the series?
Yeah, that is a good question. I feel like that part of the reason last night is that they decided, right, like without Aaron Gordon, they trust to guard Julius one on one, right? Like they're fine with that. They're only going to bring double teams on Ant, and like that's I think that's part of the reason why like last night the Io and Jaden did kind of go off was because now without Aaron Gordon, they're having to put somebody else on Randall, and they're bringing double teams, and now they're bringing double teams on both Julius and Ant. So pretty much they're in rotation. They're in the blender like nearly every possession because the possession is probably going to start with either an Ant pick and roll to the point of they're going to have to bring two, or it's going to start with like a Julius like in the post or in the high post, and they're wanting to bring a double without Aaron Gordon out there either. So then all of a sudden, like they get the defense in the blender in rotation. So I've liked his decision making even as of last night. Of like I'm not going to force it just because Aaron Gordon isn't on me now. You're right in that I would like a little bit more out of him. Especially when does have those one-on-one matchups of just like being able to get to the rim. But I do think his decision making has been quite good, and his defense has been pretty solid. Whenever he's gotten switched out onto an island, he stayed strong. Like he's used that to his advantage, and he's kind of stonewalled some people, including Jamal Murray a couple of times. So yeah, obviously, like he was a bit lackluster. He had a couple of strong finishes, like as you kind of expect out of him, especially without it. But um, I like his process, I guess is what I can say of like I'm not gonna just like push the issue because I think I have the advantage. And pretty clearly like Denver doesn't want him to have the advantage because they were bringing double teams against him last night too. So I think if you went back, you could see a good amount of hockey assists from him, even if he doesn't get credit in the box score. I think I have the box score right here. He only had 4 assists last night, but like I think that he's a conduit to good offense. And if they're going to keep bringing double teams on and feel like they have to against him and Ant, like that's only going to be awesome for the rest of the offense and for Jaden getting to the rim and for Io getting to the rim and for Dante getting open threes and stuff like that. So yeah, again, not the best. Like again, similar to Ant, not the best, but I'm not necessarily like actively hating how he's playing out there.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I will say the process, especially after that first quarter, I didn't love it in the first quarter. I felt like he kind of forced a couple shots over Spencer Jones, and I don't think a lot of people realize, but Spencer Jones is actually a damn good defender himself. But yeah, after that, I feel like the process was really solid, and he was making the right reads as a playmaker. I feel like Randall's playmaking is super underrated. I feel like that's a big thing that this offense needs to lean into, and they were doing it a lot. Last night, and I thought he responded really well. Um, and then game two, I thought he was awesome. He was just punishing mismatches. I do think your point about the coverage is spot on because they were double teaming him a lot. So yeah, it makes sense that he's passing out of those a lot more. But when he was drawing those mismatches in game two, I thought he did a great job of attacking them. And I mean, I think his defense throughout the series has been really strong, and that was definitely a concern heading into the series. Just with the defensive season he's had, not great overall, but on these switches, like you said, against Murray, and then being able to guard Jokic at times when Rudy sits, I feel like he's been really awesome. Aaron Gordon in the first two games, he defended him a lot. He matched that physicality, and I feel like defensively he's probably been my favorite part of the series from Randall, but I would like to see a little bit more offensive consistency. I think they can probably get by Denver just with how this series is breaking right now, with them being up 2-1 and not getting a stellar version of Randall. I will say he was great in game two, but the other two games he wasn't great in my eyes, but I do think they're just going to need a little bit more offense from him to ultimately reach their ceiling in the later rounds. So yeah, I think that's just something to monitor with this team. I think most people would probably label him as like the team's biggest X factor. I don't know where you land on that, but I feel like that's a pretty fair label for him. And yeah, I think it's going to be worth monitoring. Overall, generally solid. I just like to see a little bit more scoring, but at this point, it really hasn't mattered. And I feel like, sort of like we're talking about with Ant, that's just a testament to this all around roster that they have. And I mean, some of the shot creation and the scoring options they have are really powerful, especially against this weak Denver Nuggets defense. I think last point about the Timberwolves before I have one question about the Nuggets, and then we can move on to some of the other series. This Io and Dante sort of backcourt pairing next to Ant, I feel like that's really stood out to me in this series, and just how well they can complement him, but also scale up if need be. Like we saw last night with Io racking up 25 points, and then Dante just making all the hustle plays, hitting some big shots, and then obviously that big shot he hit in game two. But yeah, in general, do you feel like this combination of Io and Dante is a long-term, sustainable backcourt pairing next to Ant?
Yeah, I do. And like you're not going to find a much larger Dante DiVincenzo fan than me, I will say. I have to stand by my red-bearded my compatriot in that way. But yeah, again, plus 20 last night, just going to throw that out there. Just been bonkers in that stat, and obviously that can be a little bit flimsy, but like when you're consistently that far positive, you're probably doing something. But in terms of like the long-term pairing, I just love that they're both obviously really good shooters. Dante, they probably like other teams probably care about more and game plan for that more, but like they bring two completely different things that are both awesome to have one pass away from Ant, right? We saw that in game two, right at the end of the game, that big shot you're talking about. They doubled Ant just straight up at the top of the key. Dante's one pass away. He gets an open three. He's knocking that down like at a really high clip. Like that, and that's awesome to have one pass away because like then they're gonna think about whether they can bring that double team or not. And then Io, like we saw last night, like if he's one pass away or if he's playing off of the double teams and he gets by one, he's going to finish that at the rim. So it's cool to have both of those aspects to it. I feel like that a lot of us were clamoring for the more of the Io archetype of being able to take it off the bounce, get into the paint, and go finish. But I think that both can help a lot in terms of their spacing and just playing off of Ant's gravity. So it's cool to have both of like, all right, this game we kind of want to push this button a little bit more, or like we know Jokic isn't going to give a lot of resistance at the rim, so we want to put Io out there so that he can go 10 of 12 and go finish every layup that is in front of him. When in this game, maybe they have a little bit more rim protection, but they're still bringing the double on Ant, and so we'd rather have a more perimeter threat of Dante, and maybe he's feeling it and he goes 5 of 8 from 3. So I would love it if that was like the long-term aspect of it. Maybe neither of them are like true point guards, which you could argue is an archetype that you would want next to Ant as well. But just in terms of like their skill set and what they bring off of what Ant can do, I love having both of those being able to kind of pick and choose based on the matchup, based on who's feeling it that game. But yeah, having both the threat to drive and the threat to shoot. And again, Io was one of the best 3-point percentage shooters in the league this season. But like having both of those skill sets is really awesome and really huge next to Ant.
Yeah, I think that's such an awesome point about how different their skill sets are and just how much that benefits Ant. Having a guy who can break the paint in Io and create for himself, and then Dante isn't as much of a self creator, but he's truly one of the best 3-point shooters in the league, and he can do a little bit of self creation. And then you look at the playmaking, I feel like they're more of that connective playmaker type of guy, but they can really stabilize the offense and they don't make many mistakes. I feel like Dante, especially this year, has cut back on those mistakes, and then defensively, they both wreak havoc as defensive playmakers, and I think Io's really solid on the ball as well. And I feel like just that malleable skill set from both of them is really the perfect pairing for Ant, in my opinion. I feel like a lot of people want this star point guard next to Ant, but I do feel like that skill set could get a little bit repetitive in some ways, and I feel like this brings out the most in Ant in many ways. I mean, I would kind of compare them. It's not a perfect like 1-for-1 or 2-for-2 comparison, but it's kind of like a Derek White and Drew Holiday backcourt in some ways with those two, the skill sets that they can provide and how malleable they are. And I feel like that's the perfect mold to pair Ant with. And I do personally believe in this long term. I think we're potentially going to see some reshuffling of the roster, but I wouldn't personally be looking to target a star point guard in the offseason.
Yeah, that's an awesome point because I feel like, it soaks in of like, oh yeah, we do need like another creator. And like, obviously, like, I don't think you can have enough creators. We're going to talk about some of the other series and like, Cade Cunningham could really use one of those, probably more so than that. But like, it's an interesting point to make of like, I feel like it's been hammered for so long that like, you get in your head of like that is the best route to go, but then it's like, okay, let's back up for a second and think about like what skills we want those guys that are next to Ant in the backcourt. What skills do we want them to have? So yeah, so awesome point, and just like that I'm gonna mull that one over later as well as I think about future roster construction. Obviously, want to live in the moment right now, but it's cool to hear kind of like the pushback against like the point guard point. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you liked the point there. And that was definitely something throughout the year. I was like, oh, they need a point guard, they need this. But then as soon as they got Io, really, I was like, okay, I feel like they have enough skills to sort of make that up in the aggregate, even if you don't view Io as a traditional point guard. I think he's a little bit more of a point guard than a win personally. But yeah, I feel like Io has been just the perfect addition to this team. And him paired with Dante, and then even Bones Highland off the bench is just this ultimate spark plug. I feel like altogether, it really makes a solid backcourt with Ant, and I think it's a championship level backcourt. In fact, I think we talked a lot about the Timberwolves. Obviously, that makes sense because we both cover the team.
Yep, have
But
to.
yeah, one last question about this series in general. From a Nuggets perspective, what do you think the Nuggets' path to coming back from down 2-1 is? And I think the big thing is, hey, you got to get Jokic going. But how do you sort of envision them potentially doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that is a great question. I mean, I think it's just trying to make sure that you got to get the Murray Jokic two-man game going. And I know that's like easy to be like, oh, they just got to do it. And it's like, well, it's a lot harder than saying that. But yeah, Jokic has kind of got to get back to be able to make those like 8 to 10 footers like we were talking about. I've never seen him miss that many in my life, and he can't just settle. He cannot just like stand on the perimeter and just shoot over the top of Rudy because like the Wolves are going to live with that every single time. They don't care how many that he makes; they are going to live with that. So I guess he's just got to be a little bit more assertive in that way. I'd say. And maybe he did try to assert himself a little more, and maybe Rudy just stonewalls him. But like I would rather, I personally, if I was like making the game plan, which I shouldn't be because obviously I don't know enough to be able to do that, but I would say I would just be telling him like you can't just like take what they're giving you. Like you can't just be okay with that because I feel like the Nuggets team as a whole was just fine with taking whatever the Wolves were able to give them because they were so connected and so relentless on the defensive end. But obviously, it starts with Jokic. Murray was awesome the first 2 games. Really not great last night. So they got to just find ways to kind of like get that two-man game going. Maybe it's a little bit more like off-ball actions kind of with them to try to create advantage that way instead of just having, all right, Murray, you're bringing it down against Jaden and you're already so tired from having to work so hard just to get into the action because Jaden is picking you up 3/4 of the court. So maybe it's a little bit more off-ball actions for Jamal just to kind of get him with a head of steam heading downhill and operating and starting out in the mid-range. But those would be kind of the two things is like Jokic and the Denver team as a whole, they can't just settle and just take those shots just because like they're kind of open and they feel like they have to. They got to be a little bit more assertive in that way. And also just like, yeah, I would move Murray off the ball a little bit more and have him coming off of pin downs and other like floppy actions in order to get the ball in an advantageous position and also so he doesn't have to work so hard just to try to get it down the court.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love that point about the off-ball actions because I feel like that's an essential element of this Nuggets offense. Watching them throughout the season, that was a big part of their offense, and even the past few seasons, with Michael Malone before that. And that's something we really haven't seen a lot of. And it's just sort of spamming this Jokic Murray two-man game, but it's really repetitive in some ways. It's just like a high ball screen action there, and they're not really utilizing the full playbook. So I feel like that's something that they definitely have to do. And then for me, it's more so balance in that knowing when to attack if you're Jokic versus knowing when to play make. I feel like I sort of mentioned this earlier, but really in that fourth quarter of game two, it was just all Jokic and Murray, and it was really nobody else getting involved. It wasn't much of Jokic as a playmaker. And that's obviously easier said than done because of how great Gobert's been and how that also allows the Wolves to sort of stay home, and then you don't have many defenders to attack on the Wolves side, and all of these things. It makes it really difficult, but I do feel like there's hasn't been a real consistent balance. You look at that fourth quarter of game two, and then really most of game three, it was just Jokic trying to get his and being, in my opinion, pretty assertive, but not balancing it with the playmaking. It was just too much of one thing. And then you look at before, really in the first 3 quarters of game two and throughout most of game one, even though they did win, it was more so Jokic leaning into that playmaking. So I feel like it's just finding a way to balance that and not get too repetitive would be the big key for me. And then defensively, I honestly don't know if there's a solution. To the Wolves continuously attacking the rim. I know they went zone a little bit, but I don't think that's really sustainable. That didn't seem to work. So I feel like if the Nuggets do pull this off, it's going to be based on their offense. And I don't know if there's anything they can do about the defense, quite frankly.
Yeah, that's both fair points. Yeah.
All right, I think we can move ahead. Let's talk about another 3-6 series where the 6 seed has a 2-1 lead, and that would, of course, be the Hawks over the Knicks. What have been sort of your major takeaways from this series?
Yeah, man. Like I feel like when I'm watching like other teams that aren't the Wolves, I always skew to like maybe it's just like the most simple thing, but I just look at matchups and this one has just like fascinating like one-on-one matchups across the board because I mean, we've experienced it for years like as people watching the Wolves of like how do people guard Cat. So, I just have like really loved that kind of chess game between the Hawks and the Knicks. Just in terms of like, okay, how are we going to guard Cat? Who are we going to put on him? And then how are they going to guard Jalen Brunson? Right? Like, so it's just kind of been interesting. I like the game two, I think it was. Yeah, that was Monday night. They kind of flipped it between like a Kongu and Kaminga. And then they were putting more of the Kaminga wing aspect onto Cat and just kind of playing off of that. And then at the end of the game, they flipped Nikhil onto Jalen Brunson instead of Dyson Daniels. And the Hawks are blessed with so many perimeter defenders, but that's kind of where I skew initially, just in terms of this matchup. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. I think they got to get Cat more involved is the bottom
Hmm.
line for me. If you're the Knicks, I think this has been a really rough series for both Brunson and Mike Brown. I feel like the blame is sort of split there, but yeah, I mean, the Hawks have done a tremendous job, really switching things up, on Cat, but at the same time, just from a real simplistic perspective, he just has such a size advantage over this team, and he has scored the ball pretty well when he's gotten the opportunities. He just hasn't been involved much in the offense, and I feel like that's on Brunson to sort of make those plays, and that's on Mike Brown to sort of draw up more actions for him. I feel like the Hawks' defense on Brunson has also been fascinating, and that was one of the things I was really looking forward to heading into the series, where they just have so many good perimeter defenders to throw on him, especially Nikhil, Alexander Walker, obviously, and then Dyson Daniels. Just that tandem has been really difficult for Brunson, and then even Jalen Johnson at times. That's another difficult matchup. They just have a ton of size, and I think that's made Brunson's life really difficult. Obviously, he's still putting up really good numbers. I think he's averaging like 28 points in the series, so that's great. But he hasn't been super efficient. He hasn't been playmaking much, and I feel like it has been a little bit too much hero ball from Brunson, and I feel like that's also on Mike Brown. Sort of similar to what I was saying about Cat, but hey, get some of these other guys involved. Mikal Bridges had a really rough game last night, but he also only had 3 shot attempts, and I feel like he just needs to be more involved in the offense. And that's been the case all year with this Knicks team, really. You look at Mike Brown, everyone was saying that he's going to sort of implement a little bit more of a egalitarian offense compared to Tom Thibodeau. And you know what? Jalen Brunson's usage rate has went up, and they've became even more dependent on him. So I feel like that's a big problem, and that's something that the Knicks can fix. But then on the other end of the court, Brunson's getting hunted relentlessly, and they don't have a guy that they can sort of hide him on with this Hawks team that has all sorts of size. CJ McCollum would be the guy he sort of has to guard because he's the smallest guy, but CJ's been eating him alive, and it's been a tremendous series for him. So yeah, I feel like that's personally my biggest takeaway. And then also just from a Hawks perspective, I think it really bodes well for them that obviously they're up 2-1, but they also haven't gotten stellar performances out of Jalen Johnson or Nikhil Alexander Walker on offense. So I don't know. I picked the Knicks in 6 personally, but I think this one could tilt the other way at this point.
Yeah, that's what I had too. It was I had Knicks 6, but yeah, just shout out CJ McCollum, man. You know, we may be upset with him for all of the CBA stuff for various reasons, but holy crap, man! Like that dude is hooping right now. Like he is just not. He's not being denied. He's averaging 27 a game, like and hit the game winner last night with like 10 seconds to go. And they have such a reliance on him. But like who knew that that would be such a huge acquisition for them? And how well that he's fit in just kind of with those lanky athletes that the rest of them have. But just kind of to your point about like bringing Cat, like getting him more involved on offense, like do you think that would be more of like let's hammer Brunson Cat pick and roll like more and more? And obviously they're obviously doing it a lot, but like would you do that more, or are you kind of more in the camp of like let's rather like find different ways to get Cat involved, whether it's like on the block or just some kind of off ball action in order to get him the rock in a good spot?
Yeah, I think it's been a lot of Brunson Cat pick and roll. So I just look to get him looks in a different way, especially on the block, like you said, and just sort of using his size to his advantage. I feel like in the first quarters, especially, he just hasn't had much usage, and then really throughout the game, he's been generally pretty efficient. And they just haven't gotten to him enough. So I feel like just finding a little bit more variety there would be the key for me because there has been a lot of Brunson and Cat two-man game, but also in terms of just lineup construction, there's been a lot of just Cat and Brunson together, which I think obviously makes a lot of sense. But when Brunson's off the court, they've also ran some lineups where it's like OG and the bench guys or Mikal and the bench guys, and that doesn't make a lot of sense in my eyes. I would sort of just try to stagger them a bit, so you always have one of them on the court, and then in the minutes when Brunson's off, I would just sort of run everything through Cat and see how that works because I feel like on paper that's their biggest advantage. The Hawks do have a really solid overall defense. They do have a ton of size overall. Some of those smaller guys can tend to bother Cat, but they don't have an elite rim protector or an elite center that can really match him on paper. And I feel like that's just something they got to lean into.
Yeah, because like they do have a lot of like rangy wings and like strong guys, but yeah, you're right in that like not much resistance like at the rim necessarily, and like they make up for it with more of that perimeter defense. But like Okongwu is not necessarily like really like standing people down back there. So yeah, that is just that's interesting. I'll definitely be watching for that personally next game they're up. So
Yeah, for sure. And then before we move on, I also just want to echo your statement about CJ because he's been absolutely incredible. And it is really funny to look back at the Trey Young trade when everyone's like, wait, they only got CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. It's like, whoa, CJ, he looks like a really important part of this team going forward, and they're definitely going to re-sign him. Obviously, he's a little bit older, but he's such a perfect fit in the system, and he's been that go-to scorer. And honestly, it's pretty crazy that the Hawks have been able to pull off these two back-to-back clutch time wins with CJ at the helm. I feel like that was one big advantage where I lean Knicks. I was like, I think it's going to be super close, but when you have Brunson down the stretch of these games compared to like CJ and Jalen Johnson, I feel like I just trust Brunson more in that spot, and that hasn't been the case at all, honestly. And I think I've switched my opinion, especially after that game three where the Hawks, I mean, it was really, I know it ended up being close, but they just seemed like they were in control down the stretch, and that's really impressive to do against a Knicks team that has been really good in the clutch all season long. And you look at them going up against the Celtics last year in the second round, and they had those crazy comebacks, and then game two, it's sort of the opposite. So yeah, I think the Hawks have a really strong chance to pull this one off.
yeah, absolutely. Like yeah, I feel like that's all that I would see and was thinking about too. Is like Brunson is a killer in the clutch, and he did kind of power that offense down the stretch during the regular season, but CJ has matched him and probably like outplayed him at least for the last couple of games. I mean, he's just been so good and just done an awesome job of like finding his spots in that time and just knocking him down. So
Yeah, so I think we can move ahead to talk about the Spurs-Blazers series. Currently tied 1-1 with a game tonight. Wemby will be out with a concussion. Definitely this game, potentially longer. Whether it's just this game or a couple more games down the road, how do you think the Spurs can survive without Wemby? Obviously, they dropped that one when he had the concussion in game two.
yeah, for sure. I mean, like it's definitely like been a little bit scary for them, and it gets a little bit scary like when he's just such been a big part. And obviously, like you immediately skew to defense, unanimous defensive player of the year. But you're right, like I just have not loved the offensive process of the Spurs without him. Like I'm just really not loving like Castle, Vassell, and Fox just kind of playing off each other. Like I don't know, it's just kind of left something to be desired and feels a little bit not like a communal effort and just kind of like each of them individually staying in their own lane. And so like each of them again individually can do good things. But I just haven't loved them like all together. So I think that like those three in particular, because those are the guys that you turn to, especially to kind of be more creators in that way. But yeah, I think that you just got to like figure out a way to kind of like mesh those guys and maybe feature one of them. Just kind of pick one. I'd probably skew towards Fox because I do think he's the best creator, just kind of out of the three of them, or at least in terms of creator for himself. And then play Vassell like more of like in that off ball role, kind of similar with what we were talking about with some of these other series. But like I just haven't really loved like those lineups and that offensive process when all three of them are together.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I would tend to lean into that. Just Fox being that primary creator, but I do think it is challenging when you look at this Blazers defense. Obviously Fox loves to get to the rim a ton, but Donovan Clinton is a fantastic rim protector in his own right. And then you look at the combination of Drew Holiday and Tumani Kamara on the perimeter. Those are two really tough matchups that they can just sort of throw at Fox. And then I think this is where the inexperience sort of rears its head. With Wemby, I was like, okay, I think that's just gonna negate all the inexperience they have because he's a complete cheat code on both ends of the floor and he's one of the best three players in the league. But then without him, I feel like that's where it sort of shows a little bit. I would I would tend to look at getting Devin Vassell involved because I feel like he'd draw one of those weaker matchups, even though they have a really solid defense overall. But at the same time, he's not a true creator. So I feel like there's going to be some challenges, and then obviously the lack of defense without Wemby, I think is going to be an uphill battle because Denny Avdia just loves to attack the rim, and he's been really good at it. And with Wemby, I feel like that was going to be a big challenge for him, but without him, I feel like that just opens up so much. And the fact that they were able to steal that one on the road, I think, is huge for them. I don't know when Wemby's going to come back. I think concussions are just really kind of a weird thing to figure out. Obviously, he's going to miss tonight's game. I would probably guess he misses the next one as well on Sunday. But yeah, you never know. And I feel like the Spurs could be facing potentially a 3-1 deficit. But at the same time, I do think they have enough, even without him, just to sort of at least win one game. Because at the end of the day, even despite the loss of his rim protection, this Blazers half-court offense hasn't been good all season long, and I feel like that's one thing that they can sort of lean into, and they have a lot of good perimeter and wing defenders to sort of make life difficult for Denny, for Drew Holiday, Scoot Henderson, who's also been having a tremendous series, that I feel like they should be able to survive, but I think it's far from a guarantee.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you kind of expect the Spurs to bounce back and have a better game plan because it is tough when obviously your main guy goes out in the middle of the game because you probably skewed your game plan that involved him probably a decent amount maybe. But yeah, you're totally right in that the Spurs do have the defenders that can match up with the Blazers, and that was kind of my biggest question before the series, how are the Blazers going to score enough? Obviously, yeah, like you said, Denny's been awesome. He likes to get downhill and get to the rim, but and Cornette's a decent rim defender, but he just doesn't strike fear into you like Wemby does, right? So Denny's probably gonna go in confident, and Scoot's been playing with confidence too, and they both are just kind of screw it, we're going, and we're taking it right at you, which I've appreciated just watching. But they also the Blazers got the perimeter defenders to kind of match up too. I mean, Drew's still doing it, man, which has been really cool to see. But yeah, I think the way the Blazers just kind of turn this on its head, especially without Wemby, is they just got to stay with that aggressiveness of we're a downhill team, we can get downhill, our main guy can get downhill, and we're just got to take it at the rim over and over again, kind of similar to what the Wolves are doing. And you even if Cornette gets a few of them again because he's a solid rim defender, it's if you commit to that and you have the personnel to be able to do it, that's how you get there. That's how you get enough points, even if the Spurs are without Wemby.
Yeah, absolutely. I think aggressive is the perfect word for them to sort of pull off this upset really on both ends of the court. Like you said, they got to be aggressive at attacking the rim, but they also got to be aggressive defensively, really making life difficult for the Spurs perimeter players. I think that's going to be the big key. Should be a super interesting series to watch play out, and hopefully we get Wemby back. He's just so fun to watch, and it really stinks that he has all these injury problems because he's just totally insane to watch, obviously. So yeah, hopefully he returns, and that first playoff game was, I mean, unreal. That
Yeah,
Wemby experience. So I hope we get to see more of that. But yeah, definitely one worth monitoring. Another series we can talk about would be the Pistons and Magic, which are currently tied 1-1. With the Magic stealing that first game on the road, which was in my eyes a big surprise. I didn't think this Magic team had it in them, but then they come out really flat on offense in game two, and the Pistons ultimately pull it away. But yeah, what do you make of this series overall?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the slugfests favor Detroit. I think that they just love playing in those. Even going back to last year, that Knicks Pistons series, the ones that they took were usually in that ilk. Just in terms of the low scoring defense first slugfest, because Orlando obviously in years past has had a really dang good defense with similar personnel, but this year they haven't been as good. So if I'm Detroit, I'm fine playing in the muck, right? I want to make it as gross as possible because they're probably going to be able to come out with a win for that. but yeah, they like Pistons just have to find any way to get Cade some room to breathe though. And he's like, I think he's leading. Yeah, he's averaging 33 a game right now, which leads like any player in the playoffs, which is insane to me. Of like just watching it and being like, who else like do you guys like really are you really worried about if you're the Magic, right? But like he's still finding ways to get there, which has just been like again hat tip to him. Like he's been able to like find his spots and like generate just enough. Obviously Orlando took game one, but like he's done enough for the Pistons offense in order to take game two, and I'm expecting them to still take the series. I think it'll be a little bit longer, probably six at least. But yeah, they just need to find ways to keep getting him room to breathe. And like, if anybody else shows any kind of juice on offense that can help with that and give him a little more space to operate, they got to lean into that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Cade's been totally amazing this series, and it, like you said, it is really absurd what he's able to do with really no extra shot creation or floor spacing around him. Um, Ultimately, I think Game One was sort of a mirage for the Magic. I hope this doesn't turn into a cold take, but yeah, ultimately, I feel like this style of play does favor the Pistons, like you said, and I feel like they're gonna have no problem if the Magic are super physical. I do feel like it will be tough long term for the Pistons, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on sort of their long term viability in the playoffs, just based off that lack of shot creation. But I do think they have enough to get past this Magic team, and offensively, the Magic's half court offense has been really tough all year, despite some of the talent they have. And the Pistons defense, I think, like we saw in Game Two, really can exploit that weakness. And I think the other big thing for me, I think the shot creation would be huge, but it's like, are you really gonna get that from like a Dennis Jenkins or a Sar Thompson, whatever the case may be? I think they just need Jalen Duren to be super assertive and aggressive throughout the series. You look at Game 2, he had a really strong performance. Game 1, not so much. I feel like that's going to be the big key for the Pistons making this a 5 or 6 game series instead of a 7 game series, or potentially get an upset. And then ultimately, big picture, I think just aggressive Duren is going to be the key for their chances just to have any real shot of a deep playoff run.
Yeah, that's an awesome point about Duren. Like he has to be brought up in this case because if you're looking around for more offense, like he's prime candidate number one. And obviously, like that's a little bit different because he can't necessarily provide that breathing room for Cade. Kind of like what I was talking about, but like that's the way to go, right? Like he's the one that can go and put guys in the rim and really like use that strength to his advantage and just play through contact. So you're totally right in that. On the Magic side, just the one thing that I had written down of just like stuff that I was watching is like I just think Paolo and Franz are really struggling with those levels of defense that the Pistons have. Like they've got the point of attack defenders, and then they've got the rim defense too. And I just think that they can solve one of those problems, but then they struggle with the other one. And you take your pick on which one that is. But they're just really struggling with that.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, and I think there's a lot of factors there. I think like on paper they should be able to, despite the Pistons' elite defense, they should be able to make things work. But to me, Franz doesn't look close to 100%. I think that's a big factor. I don't think that Jamal Mosley has put them in a position to succeed, I'll say. I don't think there's a ton of creativity with his sets. And then also just the floor spacing, I feel like, is a real big problem. Despite getting Desmond Bane, this floor spacing has continued to be a massive problem. And, I'm not completely out on Paulo and Franz long term, but there's definitely some questions of if they can figure it out, especially because neither of them have developed a real jump shot. I think that's a big problem. We can talk about the spacing around them other than Bane, who's obviously terrific and he's been amazing throughout the season. But when you look at this team, I feel like they're going to need at some point one of them to develop that jump shot. And that would just make, like you said, breaking through those levels of defense a lot easier.
Yeah, you're talking about space to operate, man. Like we should flip that to the other side of the floor because they're both like, downhill like strong guys, but like you said, like the shooting it just isn't there and it's just so much pressure for spacing with Desmond Bane. Just like if he's just like the one guy, and again, like you said, he's awesome and he's been great this year and he was awesome in a couple playing games and all of that. But yeah, it's just so much pressure on him to provide any kind of air for Paolo and Franz to operate where they want to. But you're totally right in that they need somebody else to step up to kind of give them a more tilted defense to look at instead of a stacked up one, and having to break through and like solve 3 different equations before they can even get a shot up.
Yeah, most definitely. And then final sort of question here with this series is long term. Obviously, we saw the Pistons' lack of shot creation cost them in game one, and then game two. While they did pull off a win and they ended up winning by like 20 or so points, it still didn't look great offensively. Do you think this is going to eventually cost them in terms of being able to come out of the East, or do you still think they have enough to come out of a weakened Eastern Conference despite this really glaring flaw?
Yeah, I mean, I think they do have enough, and that they've like proved it to the point of this year where like I would feel like I would be disrespectful to be like, nah, they can't do it. I would not bet on them to. If I was betting and they make it through, and then maybe the next series we're going to talk about, or one other one of like if the Cavs make it, like I think that I would pick the Cavs in that series personally. I just think that like Donovan Mitchell provides like just a completely different level than what they're facing right now, and a guy that can stretch it out. And obviously, you can talk about Harden and Mobley kind of surrounding them, but like I mean, we're talking about the layers of defense that Paolo and Franz are struggling with. Like, I think that Mitchell can break one part of that, and Mobley can break the other. And Mobley's had some awesome games in these playoffs too. So again, maybe getting a little ahead of my skis there with the Cavs. Obviously, the Raptors took it last night, but yeah, I would not pick them. I think that they would be out of the four teams, like obviously like the Hawks are being the Knicks. I would still personally pick the Knicks to win the series, but like I would probably put them last in terms of like a team coming out of the East if they make it to the semifinals. And maybe that's a little bit of a hot take, and you could probably talk me into a reason of why they're not last. But like if I was like power ranking the teams that I think are going to make it out of the first round, they'd probably be last on that list.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I do feel kind of bad disrespecting a 60 win team like that, so I do have to give them some level of a chance, but I just think in the playoffs, secondary shot creation and 3 point shooting are so vital, and I don't think it will cost them in this series because the Magic have just been really so bad all season long, and they do have some really key flaws as well on that sort of similar note. But when you play the Cavs, I think that's a different monster. I think this Cavs team looks like a legitimate finals threat in my eyes. I think that's a nice transition to them. But yeah, quickly, I mean, just thinking about that, I feel like Mobley and Allen can just take away so many of those driving lanes. And then that paired with the lack of creation, I do think the Cavs would pull that one off. But yeah, ultimately, switching gears, what do you think of sort of this Cavs Raptors series? What have been your major takeaways?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think before the series, like I had the Cavs in a sweep. So good on the Raptors for proving me wrong. Nice work. Um, just starting the Raptors side, like almost similar to the Blazers, where like I just didn't trust that they'd be able to score enough. And obviously Scotty was freaking awesome last night. And he scored 30 plus, I think. And so like I think that's just their path. Like I just don't really trust like the Ingram Barrett like 2A 2B duo really at all. Like Ingram's had a couple stinkers, and I just don't know if like their games really translate all too well. But yeah, so like that's just like on the Raptors side of things. Also, just a quick shout out to Colin Murray Boyles. Like that dude is hooping, man. Like he's awesome. Like I don't know. I just like I love like the weird archetypes like that, where it's like this doesn't really make sense, but for some reason, like he was awesome. I think he scored like 20 something last night too. Like he was really good, and he's been really good this series, and they've needed that because Jakob Pertl looks like pretty much unplayable at this point. And if we weren't focused on the actual basketball at hand, we could have a conversation about that extension that they gave him. But we're going to focus on the here and now, so because that was brutal. But so that's more on the Raptors side of things. Just on the Cavs side, like it's been really awesome to see. Like, all right, Harden and Mitchell like love their meshing on offense, and then everyone else has followed suit. And then Mobley's kind of like even like in terms of the game, it's like all right, Harden and Mitchell like initially we're hammering you in the first quarter, and like we're hitting shots, and we're doing it, and we're meshing well together. And then Mobley's kind of just followed them, and the rest of the guys are too. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a great point about Colin Murray Boyles. I'm so glad you shouted him out. He was a favorite of mine coming into the draft, and
mm-hmm.
his rookie season has been really stellar. And I think it's crystal clear at this point that he's their best option at the five over Podol, who has really struggled this season and this series. But yeah, his extra rim protection, his ability to score inside, his playmaking has all been really stellar. And for a rookie to step into this series and immediately provide that is huge. I don't think they would have a shadow of a chance to be even competitive without him, quite frankly. I think he's just filled in so many gaps for them, and he's been massive. But I totally agree with sort of the Barrett, Ingram second option, first option, whatever you want to call it. Maybe consider Ingram the first option. It's not great. And I agree that that sort of game doesn't translate well to the playoffs. And I think that's going to ultimately cost them. I think the Raptors are really still one major piece away. I think Scotty's terrific as an all-around player. He had an absurd game last night, but at the same time, I don't think you can count on him to be a primary shot creator on every single night, especially in a series like this when you have elite rim protection in Mobley and Allen. I think it's going to be really tough for the Raptors. They obviously pulled off a big one last night, but I don't know if I see them winning another game. I think there could be a few more competitive games, but from what I saw in from the Cavs in Game 1 and Game 2, and then some of the flaws on the Raptors side, I think the Cavs are pretty comfortably in the driver's seat, and I think they'll pull it off in 5 or maybe 6.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like, I don't know if I see the Raptors taking another game, but you read my mind when you're talking about Scotty Barnes, where it's like awesome player, like really good defensively, but like I just don't think he can really power a high powered playoff offense really. And they tried to kind of supplement that with like the Ingram Barrett thing, but like I don't know, I just don't trust either of those guys really. And obviously the quickly injury hasn't really helped, but I'm not sure if it will because that just gives another guy that like Harden and Mitchell will hunt out there, and they will. They'll do it over and over again, and they've already been doing it. Like I said, like love their offensive process, but like man, like if Quickly's back out there, yeah, it might help some on the offensive end, but then again, like they're gonna, or sorry, Harden and Mitchell are gonna put him in the action every single time, and it's probably gonna be for profit. So
Yeah, I completely agree with that one. I saw a lot of Raptors fans on Twitter and stuff being like, "Hey, we don't have Emmanuel quickly." It's like, yeah, I mean, I guess that helps the offense a little bit more, but there's two sides of the ball, and we see this in the playoffs every year where these smaller guards get hunted. And I feel like just in general, this Raptors team is just one major piece away. I think they're gonna have to make some sort of a move in this offseason. I don't know what that is, but I just don't think Barrett, Ingram, and then even obviously he's injured, but quickly can be this important to a playoff team that has any real sort of ceiling. I think if Ingram's like your 2A, 2B, maybe third option even ideally, I think that can really work. But for him to be this important, we saw it with the Pelicans too. He didn't perform well in the playoffs with them. I think there's a lot of evidence where it's just like he can't be this important to a playoff team. So I think the Raptors have some decisions to make, but the Cavs have been super impressive, and I view them as a legitimate title threat. The Harden trades really worked out well, and I mean the Mobley Allen two-man games or uh, big man duo has been really incredible, and Mobley's been awesome on offense this series. I think if they can continue to get this version of Mobley, which is a big if, because like we said, the Raptors don't have a ton of rim protection, but I think that could be a massive boost to their title chances.
yeah, for sure. I think that's the guy I'm watching kind of as this series progresses and as they move farther into the playoffs because obviously like we know Harden's track record, especially like later on in the playoffs and everything like that. And I hate to do that of like talking about like legacy stuff, but like you can't ignore it. Like you got to talk about it. And I don't know. I think Mitchell is every year he's just underrated. Like that dude just can put the ball in the hoop, man, and he can do it in any way that you want him to, which is really awesome. But Mobley's probably the guy that I'm looking for of like as their X factor because obviously he can provide the defensive resistance, like we know that. But it's more of like the offensive side of the ball of like if Harden does have one of those stinkers, like he's gonna have to be the one that steps up and like he can make or break them realistically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the pitch for me with this Cavs team making a finals run has always been if Harden's in this third option mold, and then you're really just counting on his playmaking. And then you have Mobley being awesome and aggressive. I think that's really the key. And then Mitchell, I trust that guy in any high leverage situation. I totally agree. I feel like he's gone a little bit underrated, and he's gotten criticized for some playoff shortcomings that are his team's fault, but it's not his fault. This guy's been awesome in nearly every single playoff game he's ever played, and I think it would be awesome to see him make a deep run because he's never been to the conference finals despite doing everything humanly possible to get his team there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I think we can move ahead to the Rockets and Lakers series, and the Rockets find themselves down 0-2. despite the Lakers not having Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves, and Luka and Reeves may be coming back at this point. So yeah, credit to the Lakers, but yeah, any takeaways here on either side?
Yeah, I keep laughing. This has just been like, oh god, this has just been the most like frustrating series to watch. I feel like just kind of from both sides, but like more from the Rockets. I think that just the Rockets, I'm just like sitting there like, what the hell is going on? Like, what are you guys doing? And it's just like, anyway, so, but I digress, and what do I know? But their offense has just been atrocious. I don't think there's any other way to really put it. There's like just no commitment to movement. There's no multiple actions. It's just like, oh, we're going to do this one thing and then rely on Kevin Durant to bail us out. And it's like, okay. And then Reed Shepard isn't playing. Like, I don't know. I always joke with my friends about them. I think they have about like 1.6 good offensive players on the whole roster, and however you want to like divvy that up is fine by me. But between those three guys, but God, it's just like been so annoying to watch them. And like I obviously, I have the Lakers big market, old man yelling at cloud syndrome for sure. But it's just been so frustrating to watch them try to play offense against this Lakers team who's, again, like you said, down two players, but also like not fielding really like a great defense.
Yeah, no, that's the perfect way to put it. It's been a rough watch, and I mean, first off, I'll give a tip of the cap to JJ Redick, who's really dialed in his defense, and the team defense has been terrific. But to me, this is more on the Rockets for being down 0-2. Even though you're missing Durant in the first game, I think losing that one is brutal, and then losing the next one with Durant is even more brutal. And yeah, just both of these teams' offenses has just been really tough on the eyes. And the Lakers, it's understandable because you're missing at this point your two best players. But the Rockets, it's really inexplicable. I think this has been an awful series for Ime Udoka. I think he's probably going to get fired at this point. And I all season long, I feel like I've had significant concerns with the Rockets in terms of their clutch time offense, how they don't have much floor space in it all, and how you can sort of scheme that in the playoffs. And I didn't think it would happen against the Lakers because they're missing their two best players, but boy, it's happened against the Lakers already, and that's a massive red flag. They need to make some big changes. I think when you look at Thompson and Şengün going forward, I think you're going to have to pick between one of them because you just can't have two non-floor spacers be two of your three best players in the modern NBA. I think that's just really untenable. I think when you look at Şengün's defense as well, that's been a massive issue. He's been getting thoroughly outplayed by DeAndre Ayton, of all people. I think that's
Dominating,
a
baby,
big
dominate.
concern. Dominating is back, contract year. So he's gonna have to secure the bag. But yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people are going to blame Durant for this, but to me, it's far more on roster construction and then sort of like you were talking about Udoka not really running much of anything on offense, quite frankly, and the lack of creativity there, and that's been a huge problem. And then his inability to trust Reed Shepard is truly baffling because when you look at what this team needs, they need more playmaking and they need more 3-point shooting. And, say what you will about Shepard's defense, but he can provide both of those things. And quite frankly, when you're scoring less than 100 points in a game, you really should be focused on the offense, not the defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like when that you can break that defense for sure. But like, just real quick, because you were talking about having to pick between them. I gotta ask then, like, if you had to pick one of Şengün or Thompson going forward, who you picking?
Yeah, I think ideally you keep Thompson. And I think Thompson's like the far better asset going forward. My concern is what are you going to get for Şengün? I was thinking about this, especially after game two. I was like, who could really be interested in Alperen Şengün? With all due respect, that's not to say he's a bad player by any means. But I mean, we saw it with Sabonis at the deadline, this archetype of
Yeah,
offensive minded big men that struggle on defense and can't really shoot. That's not valued around the league, even though he is younger. I think he would have more value than Sabonis, to be clear. But it's like if you're not getting a ton of value back, and you could potentially get, I think at this point, even despite his 3-point shooting concerns, I think the league would be really intrigued by Amen Thompson, and I think you could potentially, along with some of your other assets, you could land a real superstar in return for him. So I feel like ideally you keep Thompson, but based on some of the offers and how I view their value, I feel like they might have to trade Amen.
yeah, that's a fair point, and like I fully agree with that. That's exactly what I was thinking. So last point on that though is that Luke Kennard right now is averaging 25 points per game. One, insane. Two, good for him. But three, Rockets, what are we doing, man? Like, you can hunt him. Like, you got to do something because, like, you cannot just let him come out and one, you're supposed to have this awesome defense, but like you can't let Luke Kennard average 25 a game, like to the point of like again, great offensive player, great shooter, not like talking trash about Luke Kennard, but like his defense has never really been there, and like on any other team when he's been in the playoffs, he has not been viable because like that's what teams do is anytime he's out there they just hunt him, and I just do not understand like that idea of like even at the very least if we're not going to get super creative with what we're running on offense and doing all this fun stuff like or whatever, it's like at the very least you can like figure out a way to like put him in the action and then get way better shots because of it. But that's just been baffling to me of like again shout out to him because he's hooping and he's hitting shots, but like good God, like how is that a thing that you're letting happen? Not because he can't do it offensively, but because you're not attacking it enough defensively.
Yeah, that's such a great point, man. I mean, like you said, throughout his career, he's been kind of a defensive liability, and he's been on so many different teams because of that. And every time we've seen him in the playoffs, he's been borderline unplayable because of the defense. And if you're not going to do anything else on offense, at least matchup hunt, because that's something this team should be capable of. But they have not ran any semblance of an offense, and I think that's a massive concern, and definitely anticipating major changes for the Rockets.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they can come back, especially with the potential return of Luka and Reeves. So yeah, I kind of think it's a doomsday scenario for Houston, honestly.
No doubt. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we'll talk about the Celtics Sixers before really giving some real quick thoughts on the Thunder Suds, because I mean, what
Yeah.
else is there to say?
Yep.
But yeah, tied 1-1, game 3 tonight. Do you think Philly potentially figured out anything in that game too, or do you think Boston is still really in command of the series?
Yeah, I feel like that we see this like every year when Boston's been fully constituted of like they'll kind of drop these games randomly just because they're so focused on getting up a lot of threes. And obviously those are inherently volatile and they're going to have a game like they shot last game. I think they were like took 50 of them, like 13 of 50 or something like that. Like it just wasn't good. So I just feel like we see that a lot with Boston, and then they end up like righting the ship and figuring it out for the most part. Obviously, like in their title run, but like years before that, that was always like the ding on them is like oh, they take too many threes, and like to the point of like it's inherently volatile, and you can lose a series because of that. So I kind of start there, just with that of like that caveat. But in terms of Philly, like loved Maxi's decision making, like pretty much throughout all the games, but especially in the pick and roll of like, all right, you're giving me this, I'm pulling up. You're trying to get up on me, I can just blow right by, using that speed, using his like pull up three, like all of that. I've just loved his decision making. So obviously I think it kind of starts with him, especially with no Embiid. Do you know if Embiid's playing tonight or if he's anywhere close to being back? Okay. I figured. I was like, I'm guessing that he's still out, but I realized I hadn't really seen an update in him in a while. So, obviously, like that's a whole different thing. Like, but I've loved Maxey in the series just to kind of like what he's been doing. And so I think that they figured some stuff out that way. And VJ Edgecombe, man, like coming out and just like again hitting shots too. So I've loved both of their kind of approach, especially in that game too. But I think the Celtics just take the next three and win in five. Like I just don't think that Philly has enough in order to be able to kind of push it to a longer series. And I would love to be wrong because that would be way more fun. But that would be my take just to kind of on this series, at least as of now.
Yeah, I think you really nailed it there. I mean, so many times we've seen this just one-off game from the Celtics, and coincidentally, it's often been in these game twos. So yeah, that's kind of weird. But yeah, the three-point shooting and the volatility there, I feel like a lot of that is shooting luck. Watching the game, I didn't think many of those threes were bad. You could say, hey, just attack the rim if they're not falling. I think there's definitely some truth to that. But generally, I thought Boston's process was decent. Long term, I am starting to get a bit concerned with Derek White's inability to shoot the ball. That's been a problem throughout the year, and even since Tatum returned, it really hasn't regressed to the mean at all. So I think that is a little concern. And then in general, I do think Philly has sort of exposed a potential weakness with the Celtics, and it's their inability to keep up with quick guards. You mentioned Maxey and Edgecombe. I think they were tremendous. And they gave Boston fits throughout the season, really, in their 3 or 4 meetings. But yeah, I think last game, that was my big takeaway. It's like, despite Boston having an overall really strong defense, they don't have a guy to like throw at these super quick guards, and that was a problem. And then in the pick and roll, they were playing a lot of drop coverage with Vooch and Keita. I think they should go to Tatum at the five a little bit more. I feel like that's a weapon they haven't totally utilized. So I think they have enough levers to pull to where this won't be a major concern. But I do think we could see some close games throughout the rest of the series. I could see it maybe going six, but ultimately I do lean with you, and I think it will go five. I would like to see the Celtics play Hugo Gonzalez a little bit in the series. He's, I mean, just such a tenacious defender, and I feel like he is their best option against these just lightning quick guards. And I feel like if Maxi and VJ continue to give them headaches, you know what? Give Ugo a few minutes, see what he can do. I feel like he might be their best chance in sort of stopping them, along with going to more switches and playing Tatum at the five.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea of like Tatum at the five because obviously we know what Vooch is on defense, right? And obviously Kata's been awesome this year on the defensive end, but like you're right in that like they are just kind of getting killed by the quickness of Maxi and the quickness of Edgecombe. So it's really funny you bring up Gonzalez because I was just going to say I want to see Shireman play more, but more for the other side of the ball. But I'm a big Baylor Shireman guy, but like that's kind of what I wrote down is like I want him to play a little bit more. So I just think it's funny. We have two completely separate random bench guys that were like, wait, I want to see that guy play a little bit more. But that's an awesome point about Gonzalez's defense, though, and especially if that's the end of the floor that they're more worried about. If they're like, all right, I think that we're going to get the 3-point shooting back, then maybe Shireman isn't the answer. But that was just kind of my immediate reaction to game two is I'm like, just really love what he brings. And I think that he can kind of stabilize that, especially on the 3-point shooting point. So
I love the Shireman point. I would consider myself the captain of the Baylor Shireman fan club. Honestly, he's
great
been
guy.
a
All
favorite
right.
of mine. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, he's been a favorite of mine really since they drafted him, and I got the chance to interview him last season. So there's a little bit of a personal reason as well. But yeah, I love what he brings to the table in terms of his 3-point shooting, the connective playmaking, the tenacious rebounding, really taking a big step up on defense as well. So I would like to see him get more minutes as well. And I feel like he's kind of built for a playoff setting, just with his sort of irrational confidence in some ways, and then just how he can really light it up from three. I think it could be a big difference maker. So I love that point. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Awesome.
All right. I think we can really quickly hit on this Thunder Sun series because, with
Last
all due
Andrew.
respect to all my Suns listeners, including my boy Bruce Velez,
Oh
it's
no,
clear
can't
that
be
the
too
Thunder
mean.
it's clear that the Thunder have a severe advantage in this one, and just a total talent mismatch. I guess any takeaways, feel free. And then I guess the other big thing would be Jalen Williams injuring that hamstring. Do you think that impacts them all in terms of just their long-term playoff outlook?
Yeah, for sure. I'll start on the Sun side of things. They just can't break that pressure, man. Like obviously, like Booker and Brooks like kind of like to find those ISOs to mismatch on, and like Thunder don't have that. And so when that's kind of like a big part of what you want to do, and those guys are actually pretty good at that. But when that's like a main source of what you're trying to do on offense, and you're playing the Thunder, who can just switch everything and feel fine about it, like it just gets scary really quick for the Suns. So yeah, I just think that they're outmatched. OKC's defense just hounds them, and they just are really struggling to break down that pressure and find any kind of decent look. But in terms of the J-Dub point, though, like, yeah, that is definitely something to monitor because, I think it was a grade 1, and he's week to week right now. I think that, like, the average time miss was, like, a couple weeks for that. I think I saw somewhere, but, again, not a doctor, so I'm not going to try to diagnose and figure out what hamstrings are. But, like, it is another soft tissue injury for him. Like, that's another hamstring injury for him. Just like earlier in the year, and that gets scary. I mean, we're seeing that with Aaron Gordon right now. Like, those soft tissue injuries, man, like, they're nothing to screw around with. And so I think, like, obviously don't really have any concern about them passing the Suns in this round, and even in round 2, whoever, if the Rockets make a comeback or if the Lakers make it through, depending on obviously Reeves and Luka's health, I do think that they can make it through that series. But if they can make it all the way to the conference finals, I think that's when they could start to run into issues just in terms of like if J-Dub's not able to come back, or even if he is and he's limited, like that's when it could get a little bit dicey for them because he's just so massive as that secondary creator. And like obviously they kind of found lightning in a bottle with AJ Mitchell this year, but like again, as teams are going to be able to prepare for that, like they do need him. They do need J-Dub in order to kind of like to take that pressure off of Shea, but also just be that second guy for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought your point about the pressure was spot on. Yeah, that's just an issue that the Suns unfortunately can't overcome, and then that paired with the Mark Williams injury and their lack of size against Chet and Ihart. I mean, yeah, I feel like needless to say the Thunder will be able to pull this off without J Dub, but I definitely agree that as the series get deeper, it's more of a concern just based off that secondary shot creation. And I mean, it was really unfortunate to see him go down in that game because it was really one of the better games he's had all season. And I mean, we saw it last year in the finals. He was just so crucial to them. And Chet is a really great all around player, but he's not that creator type. He does need guys to create for him. So I do think, if this persists into the conference finals, it could be a real concern. But at the same time, I wouldn't be totally shocked if they were able to win it all without him, just because of their incredible all around talent and then just how amazing Shea is. I wouldn't rule it out, but I definitely think it's worth flagging and a pretty big swing factor in their quest to repeat as champions. But yeah, overall, I don't think there's a ton else to talk about with this series. So unless you have any closing thoughts, I think we can wrap this one up.
I don't think so, man. It was fun to run them through, and now I got a bunch of new stuff that you were talking about that I can watch for. So that's always what's fun about this. I feel like you kind of get like another person's perspective on it, and like definitely be watching some of these series with a closer eye now, and some of the stuff that we talked about. So it was just good to be able to like say it out loud, other than just like stray thoughts that I have in my head. But otherwise, this was a blast, man. No, I appreciate you again for having me on.
Most definitely, yeah. Likewise, I'm definitely going to be watching a few more things that you brought up. But yeah, before we officially close out the show, I just want to give you a chance to plug your work, tell our listeners where they can find you at.
Yeah, absolutely. So I write for Canis Hopus, one of the many blogs that discusses Wolves, I guess, and Lynx content. So you can find me there. I don't have anything necessarily super recently, but yeah, just have a couple of like fun pieces that have come out. I remember I wrote one about the Twin Turbos maybe a few weeks ago. So if you're hyped about Io's performance last night, and Bones Highland, of course, awesome dude, very fun to watch. You can go check that one out. I think it would still be relevant right now. I also read like an IO piece actually from the trade deadline that I have gone back and I'm like, all right, I was at least right about some of this stuff. So if you're just curious of like what we were thinking then and to now, I have a couple of those, but otherwise a couple other things out there. But otherwise, just on Twitter and Blue Sky, it's just my name on the screen. It's Benny_Hughes. But outside of that, man, yeah, we're just enjoying some hoops in the spring. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great to have you on, and we'll have to do it again. Ton of fun talking playoff basketball with you, and I'm going to close out the show here. I'll catch you guys in the next episode.